And we are back for episode number 99 of Raise the Banner podcast. We are one episode officially away from the big three digits, but we're here back today to talk plenty of Boston sports. Boys, how we doing?
Great.
Christmas right around the corner, as in 2 days. How we feeling?
Ho, ho, ho.
Doing well. Yeah. Ho, 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 indeed.
You're feeling ho ho ho?
I mean, depends on how many beers I've had.
He wishes.
Well then. We know the path to getting Ben's pants is
It's like a hard left turn. Have a pulse, basically.
Couple beers deep and see you later.
All right, let's jump into this. Since last talk, we finally got a Red Sox move. Not the real move that we were kind of looking for in Alex Bregman or I guess Bo Bichette, something like that. But we did see the Red Sox, I believe it's the 10th trade of the offseason, which is just kind of a wild concept when they have zero free agent signings. Wilson Contreras is a Boston Red Sox, with the Red Sox sending out Hunter Dobbins and two prospects. What are your thoughts on the move in itself? And where do the Sox go from here after this?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I saw a lot of people being like, "Oh, you gave up too much," to which I'd say you already had a surplus of pitchers. So what you gave up, I didn't think was all that much. But I think most importantly, like it brings a veteran presence back into the locker room, especially if you don't get Alex Bregman back. I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but and I think the biggest part to me is it gives you an actual first baseman again. Like we haven't really had a legitimate first baseman outside of a year and a half, maybe of Casas, since Mitch Moreland. So it gives you a legitimate bat. It gives you like I said, veteran presence. It gives you a right-handed bat and also, a steady, reliable first baseman that you don't have to shoehorn in. Like Romy Gonzalez was fine last year, but but now you actually have a guy to kind of stay there and play there every day. So like the move, like you said, Matt, it wasn't the one that we were expecting. It wasn't the one that's going to make headlines or be a big splash. I think the only reason it made headlines was because it was the only recognizable name we've traded so far. But it was good. It shows that they're not really asleep at the wheel the way that it might seem at times. So certainly, like I said, gives that leadership presence, and hopefully they're still talking to Bregman, still talking to Bo Bichette. I know Breslow made a comment about him focusing mostly on bats and offense, not so much pitching. And then at the same time, we saw kind of Brian Bayo being quietly shopped. So we'll see what happens there. But for right now, Wilson Contreras by himself is a good move.
Ben?
Yeah, I agree by and large. Not the move that you kind of were hoping for. And just to piggyback off of Zach's point, I think the thing that I don't think Red Sox fans should really forget about is that Wilson Contreras is actually a solid defender. Like he's not going to win any Gold Gloves, but he's got decent range, stretches well. He picks the ball pretty good. So, not a guy that if the ball ends up not getting to first base in the air, you have to really concern yourself with whether or not he's going to pick it and save an error and turn a potential bad throw into an out. He is capable of doing that. Again, not an elite defender by any stretch of the imagination, but he'll more than hold his own. And certainly won't be a reason that they need to take him out. Whereas, Casas, not a good defender, comparatively speaking. You're not going to get elite power out of Contreras. I think he's a pseudo middle of the order type bat who will give you 40-ish extra base hits a year. I think that he does have he favors the pull side, which when you're a right-handed hitter at Fenway, that's very good for hitters. So you might see mid-20s in home runs, maybe another 15 to 20 doubles. He'll be 34 in the spring. So certainly not a spring chicken by any stretch of the imagination, but a good move. At first, I was certainly sad to see Hunter Dobbins go. I think he has a bright future. Not surprised really, given the fact that you have, Heim Bloom on the other end of this deal. Obviously he's pretty familiar with Hunter Dobbins in the system anyway. I'm not sure if he's a Heim Bloom draft pick / signee. I'd have to go back and look, but he's obviously familiar with him. So
Dobbins is, yes.
Dobbins, yep. Okay. I don't know a ton about the other guys. I know that is it Fajardo or something like that. I don't know how you say his last name. Was what, like a top 30 guy for the Sox, top 15 guy for I don't know what the exact number was, but
I think he was like 11 or something like that.
Okay. So it was sad to see Dobbins go. Matt, I know you would message me saying that, his fastball whiff rate wasn't very high. Maybe that had something to do with it. I'm not entirely sure if that's like a driving factor, because there's plenty of other guys on the roster at the big league level and in the farm system who don't have good swing and miss stuff with their fastball. So, obviously, you gotta, Contreras, I would say, is a good, not great player, but in order to get good players, you have to give up, good prospects in return, which Dobbins is a good prospect. So, I would imagine that he'll be, more or less an everyday first baseman, at least to start the season. I'm not sure what Casas's trajectory is in terms of his injury recovery. Apparently he does still have some options left. So it wouldn't shock me if, when he comes back, depending on how Contreras is playing, it wouldn't even shock me just to have him stay in the minors. Because he can do that. You can't do that with Contreras. So, obviously that changes. It depends on if, what the Red Sox make for moves. The rest of this offseason, they still have a logjam in the outfield. And obviously, with Contreras basically only being able to DH if he's not your first baseman, I suppose he could be an emergency catcher if you absolutely needed somebody. But that's, you don't really want him back there for any lengthy period of time. So, having him, certainly helps. But, I think at this point, maybe you kind of have to figure out a way to eat some money and trade Yoshida along with an outfielder, if that's in fact the way that they go. Because now with, if Casas he comes back and he's hitting really well and you want the bat in the lineup, well, your better option at first base is Contreras defensively. If you can have both bats in the lineup, you obviously would have the better glove in the field. So, it certainly makes you wonder if Yoshida is certainly a guy that they would attach, to a Jarren Duran or a Willie or a Abreu deal if they decide to go that route. But I like the move overall. It certainly makes the team better defensively. And hopefully they can retain Bregman, bring him back in. I know that Story had a pretty good year, but in terms of defense wasn't great. I'd have to look. I don't know how many throwing errors he had, but I know that it wasn't his best year defensively. So, certainly a plus. And hopefully, we'll get to see him rake at Fenway.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, the big thing you said there was talking about Casas, and that's going to be really interesting for me of how they play this out. Because in theory, like, this would mean, okay, maybe now you trade Casas, but at the same time, where's his value, right? It doesn't seem like it's very high at all.
No,
and so they would be
probably the lowest
likely,
it's been.
Yeah, and so they would be likely selling pretty low on him. And so the question is, what do you do with them? Like you mentioned, he does have the ability to play in AAA still. And so in theory, that's going to be the path they're currently sticking with. But also, like you said, like, you have bats like Yoshida, who is seemingly only a DH option. And so if Casas is healthy, where do they fit together? Never mind the fact that you have other outfielders in the mix that could also take DH reps. There's Romy Gonzalez that could inevitably take DH reps, obviously, as well. So it's, all right, what are we going to do here? And like you said, like, I think that they could sell Yoshida, but they're going to have to eat probably 2/3 of his deal. Maybe they can get away with half, or they can attach someone like him to a Duran and say, if you want Duran, you're gonna have to take this deal, and then that way you get, maybe you're getting a little bit lesser of a return, which you don't like doing, but at the same time, if they're trying to save money because ownership sucks and is cheap, these are the moves that you're going to have to do. It's similar to the move that, like, I mocked a trade to the Mets with Duran, and it was them taking on Hicks. And someone was like, no one's going to take on Hicks's contract. And I was like, I no one wants him, but, like, we see teams eat a bad deal to get a player all the time across the league.
It's true.
And so that's kind of the big question, is where do they go from here next? The most logical option now is they gotta fill second base and or third base. And the question is, how are you going to do that? Personally, there was talks they're talking about Brandon Donovan with St. Louis, which would just be funny because it would just be just continuously back and forth between St. Louis, which is Chaim Bloom now, and the Boston Red Sox with Craig Breslow. But I really it's tough as a Red Sox fan. I really don't want them to trade either. I'm not going to be upset if they trade for Donovan or Marte, but the answer now is go and get Alex Bregman back or go and get a Bo Bichette, spend some money, and don't worry about giving up. You don't have to worry about giving up more assets, right? I was fine with the Wilson Contreras trade. They have a surplus at pitcher, so they didn't necessarily need him, and they have a pretty good farm system overall. But now it's like, all right, if you continue to make another big deal, whether it's for Donovan or Marte or a pitcher, you're starting to really just throw assets out the window because you really don't want to spend. So I'll give them the Contreras deal, and they can move Duran, or I'm a fan of moving Bayo, but I'm currently in the if they make another big move where they send a haul of prospects for a cheaper guy, you'll be happy to get the guy, but at the same time, I'm going to start to be pretty pissed off.
Yeah, and your point of do they go get a Ketel Marte and throw the bag at him in terms of prospects and assets you'd have to give up to get someone like him, or go Brandon Donovan? I don't know if it was Milliken or someone said Ketel Marte is obviously the bigger star. He's the bigger name. He has all the name recognition, but Donovan might be a better fit for this roster. And to which I would say
that was me.
That was you? Okay. So then there you go, even better. To which I would say, then go get Ketel Marte. I'm enough of the taking a lesser talent, a lesser, a less good player because he fits and he's more flexible and he's more, we can play him at short or second or third. Go get the better player. Enough of this trying to back into when you get lesser players to fill out your roster and make your roster more flexible, you end up with what you've got last year, which is you play well in June, July, August, and then September, October come around, and you don't do anything at the trade deadline. So now you're hoping and crossing your fingers that someone else messes up because you don't have the star power to go win out and win your division, win the wild card, whatever, and certainly not win playoff games. So that I would say go get Ketel Marte because he's done it before. I know he has all the off the field issues and whatever the case else, it might not be the best locker room fit. Yeah, I get that. And then
my biggest thing with the comparison with Marte versus Donovan is if they went and got Marte now, right? You added Contreras, which makes $17 million. Mm-hmm. You added Sonny Gray that makes, I don't know, what is it, $30 million, I think it is this year.
You're only paying him 15 though.
I think it was 30 plus.
Is it? I forget what the situation was.
Yeah, it's a $31 million deal, but the Cardinals gave us $20 million. You're only paying him $11 million.
Okay.
Now that changes obviously if you have to. It's basically plus the there's the option year with it comes with it's a mutual option with a buyout. So I think it works out to be what's the math on that? 16 or 17 million total. Yeah. If they decline the mutual option, then they have to buy him out of the deal because they're declining to pick him up.
Okay. Yeah, his number is 30 million, but we're paying 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, this is it's working within the reality of the situation. So like, I mean, I get it all the time on X where it's like, no, don't do this, just sign this player. I'm like, yeah, in a vacuum, like, yes, I would like to go sign Bo Bichette and Bregman. Like, go sign Framber Valdez as well. Like, go sign the top reliever on the market. Like, I would love that, but that doesn't seem like the reality
He's not a reliever
for
either.
them.
No, and I operate based on what I want them to do versus what I know John Henry was just doing, which is paying nobody.
Yeah, well, and that's where it's like it's a balance of like what they can do, what they should do, and what they will do.
Yeah.
And that's where it's kind of the back and forth where I'm like, all right, so they added Contreras, who's making $17 million the next couple of years, and if not, then he has like a $7 or something million buyout. They added Gray to the mix. If they went and traded for someone like Marte, that makes it's a reasonable number around like 18 to 20 million,
16, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like a huge number, but it's like, okay, well, if you trade for Marte, are you also going to sign Bregman? Or is trading for Marte mean you're out on Bregman? And if that's the case, because of, financially, I'm saying.
No, yeah.
So that's where I'm like, if you're going to trade between the two, I lean more Donovan when you kind of compare everything all together. He's 4 years younger. He's only making $5 million this year. So any addition of him really changes absolutely nothing in terms of what they would be willing to do in terms of adding another big piece. And as much as I don't know, I can't even figure out how worried I am. The off-field stuff with Marte worries me enough where it makes me question what I want, like what I'd be willing to give up. And in that sense, I know the price is big. So it's like, am I going to give up a Marcelo Mayer or a Tolley or an Early or even, a package around, well, Dobbins is gone now, but or a Bayo or something. If I'm going to give up a notable piece, a young asset or whatever, like, do I want it to be for a guy that I don't love? And that's Marte right now. And so, Ben, you responded to me. I think it was about the Marte post. It was like, you have to get uncomfortable. I'm like, yeah, I'll get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's going to be for the players that I truly, truly love and believe in. And Marte just kind of isn't that. And so I'd rather give up less. Probably the price is less for Donovan. He costs less. He's younger. He's a better fit because, versatility is always better than not having versatility.
Sure.
And he, like I said, contract-wise, he's like 1/3, 1/4 the price, and it opens the door for everything else. So like when I compare them one for one, like, yeah, Marte is a better player on the field. Just comparing them like as a single player. When I put everything together in what their strengths is that John Henry puts on this team, I rather the guy that's making $5 million this year and I don't know, probably 8 to 10 next year, assuming he has a solid year, than give up more and get a guy like Marte that I'm still not even certain will fit here in Boston because, they just dumped Devers because he apparently was an issue. We had Marte that wanted an extra couple days off after the All-Star break because the dude wanted to go vacation in the islands or something like that.
No, I firmly understand the off the field stuff and kind of being wary. As much of a hard time as I give Breslow in the front office, I do understand bringing in guys that are going to fit the culture, especially when they're as young of a team as this is, and I fully understand that, and I definitely get the roster flexibility is better, I guess, with Donovan. I just get tired of, well, you can't go get Pete Alonso because he's bad on defense and you can't really stick him anywhere else but first base. You can't go get Kyle Schwarber for the same reason. So, at what point do we get an actual player who just says, yeah, you got to stick him at this one place and go? Now, is that person that you're going to kind of get rid of that mindset for Ketel Marte? Probably not, because the off-the-field stuff I do think is kind of more of a deterrent than just a Pete Alonso say because you can't stick him anywhere but first base or DH. But it's just that's where the frustrating piece comes for me, is you keep passing up on these superstars or these actual good players because you want to play them at second, short, first, outfield, whatever the case. So that's the only frustration that comes from me. But like I said, with Ketel Marte, if the off-field stuff is as bad as it seems to be, then I totally understand the want, I guess, to move past him, because if what you're building here you believe in and all these young players are moldable, you don't want someone like him coming in and kind of tainting their mind of what a professional baseball player looks like or what a winning organization looks like.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
So, the only thing, I guess, just to play the devil's advocate is, obviously you can't necessarily have the conversation with the player when he's on the other team, right? Like, I mean, let's not pretend that it doesn't happen, but you can't really have those conversations with other teams' players. But I wonder how much, did he just not want to play in Arizona? Like, was he just unhappy with the organization, for whatever reason? They were halfway decent. They made the World Series in 2023. And, they got hot at the end of the year. They made a run. But for the, by and large, they're a middle of the pack organization, so maybe, is it possible that he was just fed up with the situation and he was just like, yeah, like, I'd rather extend my All-Star break than go back to Arizona and play baseball for a team that doesn't care to win. Who really?
Yeah, but
really
even
knows?
then, like, I don't find that as acceptable, right? Like, I understand you may not be happy, but like, if I'm putting together a team, I don't want someone like that on my team. Like, I want someone that's going to fight and show up, even if you don't like the team, but for your teammates and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess it really depends too. Like, and I'm not going to say that he fits the same mold as, your Mookie Betts, your Shohei Ohtani type athletes. But when you look at players who you would consider to be in that superstar caliber, like, how many of those guys are going to play baseball like Dustin Pedroia or play football, like a Julian Edelman? Like, the top talented players don't always come with the best attitudes, and the trade-off
but they show up to play generally.
Sure, but like
physically show up to play, not like, hey, I need 2 days off because I'm still down in the Dominican, or I'm still down in Mexico.
Sure, but that you're talking about 2 days of a 162 game season. We're not talking about a month off.
Yeah, I don't think like Manny did this.
Yeah, but I don't think it really matters in the end. Like, you have a job. Like, and I know baseball season is stretched out more than other sports, but like, when baseball season's over, whether that's in the end of September for a lot of teams or the end of October for the rest, like, you still get November, December, and January off. You get 3 months of the year, 3.5 months of the year for like off to do all your vacationing, hanging out, summertime. On top of that, you are getting paid millions of dollars, where you'll have a 10 to 15 year career, and then you will never have to work again if you don't want. Like, you have a job and an obligation to show up physically just for your job, that it's your responsibility. But like I said, it also goes down to just like, if you're a good teammate and all your other teammates are sitting there grinding every day, and you're like, yeah, I'm too good for this, I'm going to take an extra couple days, I'll be back when I feel like it, type of thing. That's like something I mean, maybe it's a little more like I have an older school mentality when it comes to coaching. I'm like, get the hell out of here. Like, I don't want you on my team.
Yeah. I'd
rather lose without you than win a few more games with you.
Right. And and I'm not disagreeing with you. It's more so just for the sake of the conversation. But it's different when you're talking about professional sports. Like, do you really think that the Pittsburgh Steelers care if Aaron Rodgers goes on darkness retreats and does hot yoga? Like, no. They're a win away.
If it was in the middle of the season, they would.
They cared when Antonio Brown was doing it, though. Like, that's why they cut him.
Right, and
Marte can go do whatever the hell he wants. If he wants to miss, show up the last day of mandatory like for spring training, like sure, whatever. But like you're missing if Aaron Rodgers was like, "Hey, I'm going to miss practice all week, or I'm going to miss a game in the middle of the season because I'm going to go on a darkness retreat," they're going to be like, "What the hell are you doing?" They're not going to find that acceptable.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even
yes,
if you just missed like 3 days worth of practice, they would be like what are we going? What's going on right now?
Yeah, but I think that my larger point of that was professional athletes care about one thing, and it's winning for the most part, right? Like I would say most professional athletes care about winning.
Well, that's the thing. He clearly doesn't care about winning that much if he's not going to show up.
I mean, I think asking for 2 extra days off in the middle of the season is, I'm not going to say it's not right. I'm not justifying it, but I don't think to me, that doesn't feel like, oh my God, that guy can't be on my roster. That's a hard, like to us, sure. But to a professional organization who doesn't have a second baseman, who hasn't been to a World Series since 2018, they've made one legitimate playoff run in the last 6 years. Maybe that's something that they don't look at it and go, yeah, that's a deal breaker for us.
Like, I get it, but the answer for me is, if you're gonna say, okay, I'll give up a haul, like say Mayer and Arias, or they want pitchers, so let's say the price is Bayo and Arias for Marte.
Yep.
Just hypothetically.
Sure.
I'm gonna look at that and say, I can go get someone that I don't have to worry about that for those 2 pieces. If Marte was like on a discount because of these issues, where like the value of trading for him is like makes it worth dealing for him, then that's like that. Like, okay, maybe that makes sense. But it's like, all right, if I have to give up Bayo and Arias to get Marte, well, I'll turn and go to, I don't know, the Padres or some team that's looking to unload a player and say, well, I'll give you these 2 players for your good player. And that's kind of a little bit what I'm talking about in Donovan, where it's like, Marte is better than Donovan, but like, if I don't have to worry about this and I'm still improving my team, and I know it goes into the Sox need a power bat and Donovan, like that's a different conversation, I guess. But like in it itself, it's like, if I have to give up huge pieces too to get this guy, then I'd rather just take those huge pieces and go get a different good player that I don't have to worry about these issues.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Like, obviously, you would rather have you'd rather want to have guys who are going to maximize their commitment and be positive influences, and all of that. But I think that, I guess I'm more coming from the angle of, I recognize that the line of what kind of locker room you want to have, what kind of clubhouse you want to have, that line's a lot blurrier than the line we're willing to draw in the sand. Because I agree with you. Because in a vacuum, right? I don't want a guy. I don't want a guy that I'm going to worry about. Is he going to show up? Is he going to show up and play tomorrow?
There's always more lenience for like the top guys. Like you kind of have to, in the sense of like, we see good players, especially like in the NFL, where like they do something bad and they're given another chance. Well, it's because they're a good player. If they sucked, no one could. It's like the famous. I think they were doing Hard Knocks with like the Rams or something, and Jeff Fisher, and he cut a kit guy at the back of the roster because he snuck a girl into his room when they had a curfew and it wasn't allowed. It's like, that would never happen if it was some stud. No stud players getting cut because of that.
Right.
But if you suck and you're a undrafted free agent in training camp, like, yeah, they're just going to cut you because they can, and they don't have to really worry about it. So yeah, there's a little more lenience for a guy like Marte because he's really good. But again, it's like, it's one thing if he was already on the team, right? You're already, like, you signed him or you trade for him, and then these issues kind of pop up. And it's like, well, maybe we should just deal with it instead of like dumping them somewhere. Then there's another thing of like, we're going to give up major assets for this guy. If we're going to have to give up major assets for him, well, why don't we just give it up for someone else? That's where kind of I stand on the whole thing.
Yeah. One angle, and it's more of just a thought that I've had pop up. It seems to me that the Diamondbacks aren't really concerned about Ketel Marte's commitment, because if they had legitimate concerns, they wouldn't be pushing for premium return this far into the negotiation process. They would be looking right, because at some point, if you're like, this guy's an actual problem, he's a poison in the locker room. At some point, you would back off of your ask, because
it's somewhere in between there. Because you wouldn't back off your ask if you have the suitors willing to like come close to that, to the point where you're pushing them against each other to try to bump them up to where you're asking. Like the team's always going to try to get the max of their return. So they could view him as an absolute cancer, but if everybody else doesn't view him that way, and the market is still high for him, yeah, they're going to hold out for whatever they can get. They think they can get for the top offer.
No, of course, but I think that, if you're the Diamondbacks, if you, look at, and I know that this is not like a true apples to apples comparison, but look at the Red Sox. They wanted to get rid of Rafael Devers so badly that they sold him for pennies on the dollar, because John Henry didn't want to pay money, and he's like, I can't have this guy on my team. Just figure out a way to get rid of him. So like, teams will do that if they truly feel that the player is a poison or a cancer in the locker room. So I think that, sure, like, is it somewhere in the middle? Yes. But I think that the fact that if the Diamondbacks are, okay, we want to get premium return for Ketel Marte, but we're willing to take something close because we really just need to dump this guy, either one of two things is true. Either they legitimately do not believe that his off the field antics are a true problem, and they're like, no, like, are we going to say no to a deal that makes our team better? Of course not. But we're not just going to dump him for the sake of dumping him, because we really don't think that that he's an actual problem. Like, sure, was it annoying that he asked for time off of the All-Star break? Sure. But so either it's either that, or that they're not getting that, like, other teams look at him and go, like, it's too risky and they're not offering enough, and the Diamondbacks just aren't interested in like truly unloading him. So,
my guess right now is they're not getting the offers they want, and it's still early in the process. Like, they don't have to trade him right now, so it's like, okay, they're probably trying to hold it out, and it's a blinking game between them and other teams of like, hey, we want this, and most every other team is saying, no, we're not giving you that because of X, Y, and Z, age, off-field concerns, all that. And it's just kind of a waiting game of who's going to blink first. And on top of that, for like, let's say the Sox, their option A is probably Bregman, right? So it's like, well, we're not necessarily like want to jump on this type of deal unless it's our next best option. And so you're probably seeing that around the league too. So it's like, all right, well, the Mets interested in Marte, or if the Sox are interested in Marte, and will these teams, how many teams are willing to make the deal right now versus if they miss out on the like option A or B?
Right. And I feel like where I keep coming back to, just to wrap my own take on Marte, is where I come back to is he's a switch hitting second baseman who's going to turn 33. That to me feels like more of a deterrent for teams to offer a premium return, because he's a second baseman, and which is obviously, if it's not the easiest position to play, but I recognize there's also more difficult areas on the field to play. But when you're a middle infielder and you're pushing 33, like, the shelf life of a player that age at that position is not very high. I look at it and go, I just don't think teams are willing to pay a premium for a guy who could be a shell of himself in 18 months because he's in his mid 30s as playing a premium position in baseball. It's not like he's a first baseman where he really, he's not moving around. He's not diving all over the place. He's not running all over the field. The shelf life there is not as high. Like, I come back to that as I just wonder if teams are not interested in paying a premium for a 32, almost 33-year-old middle infielder.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. That's
Right.
a big. And for the Sox, it's like I go back to my kind of original thought. It's look, like if we get breaking news in 2 minutes and it says the Sox traded for Ketel Marte, like none of us here are going to be like, oh my God, I'm so upset to have him on our team. We're all going to be like, yeah, they added a really good player.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in itself,
the anger there would be, okay, well, what did you give up to get him? That's where the Sox
and
fans,
even if they overpaid and they gave up a haul, like you're still going to say, well, they added a really good player to the team.
Yeah.
So like again, it's not that like any of us are like you can't like he stinks or you can't absolutely not under no circumstances. No, it's just I think that they're like he's not the guy that I give up a haul for. It's just kind of that simple. There are plenty of players that I will send the house for. There are plenty of guys I would trade Bale, Mayer, Arias, Tolley, Early, all of these guys. They're veterans that I trade for. But Marte is just not one of them. It's kind of like just that simple through what we've all kind of just broken down in the last 30 minutes. But if you're going to give up a haul, make it for a player that you love. And I don't think the Red Sox love Marte. I think they like the idea of getting him, and they would like to have him on his team, and they like his bat and his talent, but like wrap everything about him into a ball and say, do you want these issues, these potential issues, his age, his future, and give up the big haul, and give up the big prospects for him? And it just doesn't make a ton of sense to me, especially now that they just moved Dobbins and a couple decent prospects for Contreras. The answer now is go sign Bregman or go sign Bo Bichette or go sign both of them.
Yeah.
And again, that also goes back to like why I just prefer Donovan. It's like he's less, cost less, all that, and you could add him, and he barely is adding to the salary, to the luxury tax, and you could still go sign a guy like Bregman.
Yeah, I just googled his. I don't know why I didn't do this before, but Ketel Marte's contract, and all this is to say after me saying go get the star, doesn't matter about his contract. The Sox aren't doing it because he's signed under contract for $20 million a year through his age 36 season. We know they didn't want to pay Mookie Betts until his 40 season and Rafael Devers until probably the same age. So the likelihood of them getting Marte or certainly giving up anything of decent value is pretty much all but.
Yeah, well, we talked about the Sox, like their willingness to pay guys in their 30s. It's a balancing act, given like it seems like it's a balancing act for them, where it's like, all right, Contreras is 34 or going to be 34. Like they're willing to do it with him, and the answer is yes, they're willing to do for him because it's only 2 more years, and it's $17 million a year. Not even. I think the Sox are paying a little bit less than that or something like that. $16-17 million a year. It's different for a guy to do that for a guy for a 2-year commitment at $34 million versus, say, giving Pete Alonso $150 million. So it's like, in the kind of similar to Marte, it's like, I think he's probably somewhere in between where it's like, are they fine with giving if they'll take Marte's contract now? Yeah, maybe because it's $18 to $20 million a year. But like, if he was making 26, 28, $30 million a year, they're probably looking at that and saying, yeah, that's not what I want to be doing for a second baseman. Like you said, Ben, like a 35, 36-year-old second baseman, there's just not a lot of them in this league.
No,
there's just not. They don't hold up in the middle infield. They end up maybe having to move over to first or move over to third, or they're just flat out of the league because they just can't hold up at that level. And he's not like the biggest guy in the sense of his bat can carry you type of thing into his late 30s. So transitioning a little bit into the Jarren Duran conversations. of note, Craig Breslow said yesterday, the best version of the Red Sox has Rafaela in center field.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Cora has come out in recent months or weeks in saying we want Willie Abreu to be essentially a full-time player. We know Roman Anthony is locked in to the outfield, whether it's at third or in right or left or even center, whatever it may be. It seems writing is on the wall that those three players are going to be their choice, right? We haven't heard anything about Abreu, anything. We've the talk was they could trade one of the two, but in terms of interest in them actually talking to other teams, we haven't heard a single thing about Abreu. All talks on Duran. Ben, I know we went back and forth a little bit on his value and stuff like that. If you're going to move him, what are you looking to get and where do you see some possibilities?
So possibilities, the Mets possibly could use a left fielder. I know the Royals have been linked to him. They're even though they acquired an outfielder, what are we like a month ago at this point? They still said that they'd be willing to, they'd be entertaining a deal for an outfielder, and specifically related to Jarren Duran. The word was they'd entertain it, but they want the Red Sox asking price to come down. And that's when the report came out that they had, I think they just kind of threw out and been like, hey, is Cole Ragans an option? And they were like, no. So I don't know how far advanced beyond that the talks really got. But, off the top of my head, the Padres have obviously shown interest. I'm of the opinion that, his value is not, I think his value is lower than probably what the average Red Sox fan thinks Jarren Duran's value is. I personally think he's closer to the 2025 version of Jarren Duran, not the 2024 version of Duran, which is why, I don't think you're getting, unless it's a 1-for-1 for, a younger pitching prospect who you see a ceiling and you're willing to take a risk. I think that you would have to figure out a way to package, if you really want an arm, I think that you're better off packaging him with somebody else to get a legitimate arm. If they're quietly shopping Brian Bayo, that's a guy that if you want a legit arm, trading Brian Bayo and Jarren Duran could get you something close to that number 2 type guy. Now, I don't think they're going to do that because they've more or less said that they're shifting their focus away from pitching, which means that unless a team calls and says, hey, we really like player A, what is it going to take for, to land that guy? And the Red Sox negotiate and say, well, we are, open to the idea of improving our starting rotation, and your conversation goes from there. But if you're going to actively shop Jarren Duran, I really don't know if you're going to get, unless you're going to take, a mid to maybe a between medium and high, somewhere in there level prospect who you see a ceiling with. I just don't know how. I just don't see them getting anything more than that for him at this point. Just because I think, again, his value is closer to what you saw in 2025 versus what you saw in 2024.
Yeah, there's certainly. It sounds like, at least from what has been coming out, that they're kind of overvaluing him. I know, like you said, the Royals, Ben, obviously are interested in Jarren Duran. They've come out and said they don't want to pay Cole Ragans, but they have the understanding that that's pretty much the asking price for Jarren Duran. And a 1-for-1, I would agree with Kansas City. I don't think that's necessarily a even comparison. But again, if you do attach maybe a higher level prospect, a lower level major league player, or a Brian Bayo for a legitimate number 2, Cole Ragans, Joe Ryan, that might be an overpay. And then you got to look at their prospect pool. What does that look like? But again, I know that they like to operate in the shadows. So saying, going off of what we've heard or what they've said so far is kind of proven to not necessarily matter as much, but certainly from what has leaked or what has been reported, at least from, like I said, Kansas City, They're certainly overvaluing Jarren Duran, which could be a leveraging tactic. Could just be, hey, we're dangling this little carrot out here. What are you guys, giving for us? But in terms of what I would be looking for as a return for Jarren Duran, I feel like you almost have to look for pitching. I know they said they're focusing on bats. Does that mean that they're focusing on bats in free agency and looking to the trade market? Who knows? But I struggle to think of anyone on the trade market that would be kind of a fit for Jarren Duran, unless you go back to what we just talked about, and I could tell Marte. But I feel like there's been a lot more smoke around trading Jarren for pitching than there has been around for positional players.
Yeah, and maybe like and I guess I'll pull the Uno reverse card on Matt and ask a question. Given that we know that Breslow prefers to lurk around in the shadows, does that give you does it provoke a thought that because Jarren Duran is the one being talked about more publicly, that maybe it's actually Abreu that's on the block? Because they're not talking about Abreu, and things tend to come out of left field. I mean, again, not to beat the dead horse, we talked about the Dustin May trade. Nobody had the Dustin May trade. You could
pivot though,
and you could throw in the Wilson Contreras to the Garrett Crochet situation, where it's oh, hey, these guys are available on the market and the Red Sox have a need for them, and then they go out and make the move. That's as as linked as they've been. And maybe Contreras they were linked more to than they were Crochet last year, because teams actually, guys actually reported that, oh yeah, the Red Sox have had talks with St. Louis about Wilson Contreras, and then I think we were a little gun shy to be oh, well, if somebody's actually reporting that they're having conversations, it probably means it's not likely. But I wonder, do you think that there's the possibility that we're not hearing about Abreu because, that's the deal that the Red Sox would prefer to make?
I think it's probably more that they're the conversations that we don't know about are more with teams that we haven't heard of for Duran than it being Abreu instead of Duran. Meaning, we've really only heard Duran connected to KC. We haven't everywhere else has kind of been speculation. We thought, okay, the Mets could be. We know the Padres have liked him in the past. We know the Reds could use an outfielder. We have all these teams and these possibilities, but we haven't really seen the connections. And so I go back a little bit to what I think it was Bradfo reported, that the market for him has been starting to heat up, and that there's multiple teams in the mix. So, I mean, I guess in theory, I wouldn't be shocked if Abreu was the one moved. I wouldn't turn here and be oh my God, no, I'm completely out of left field, because it's a possibility. But I go back to two things. One, I think they genuinely love Abreu. I think they love him as a player. And I still think that his potential, he still has more to give as a player, especially at the plate. Tough to go up from multiple Gold Gloves, but I'll digress there. But
true.
I think it's more that they just have a series of other interested teams that we just haven't heard a clue on. And so we could turn and see him traded to, I don't know, the Braves tomorrow, and we'll be oh shit, we didn't really see that coming, because we hadn't heard a single whisper that the Braves were interested, or some other team in the situation. So that's where I kind of lean in it all. And that's what I kind of think will happen. I don't buy a ton into the Royals. I just don't see it happening. Granted, I would take obviously Reagan's, but you could sell me on a Bubic and Jensen package, or maybe even a Bubic and Blake Mitchell package. They have a surplus of pitching. Obviously, catching, they got Perez, who's still there for another year or two at least. They got Jansen, who is one of the best prospects in baseball as a catcher, and just made his debut. And then they got Blake Mitchell, who is, I think, in Double-A, but he's also a top prospect that is another catcher. So you could sell me on one of them, but I lean towards, I think it's going to be a team we really don't hear a connection with. And whether that's for top pitching, I don't know. We could see it's very much a scenario where they trade him for prospects and then use other prospects to dump and get a player that way instead of it being like a veteran for veteran deal.
Yeah, I just wonder. Like I've thought about like where is Roman Anthony's best fit on the roster in terms of where he plays. You know, is he better off in right or left?
Left would be my guess.
And like I feel like left, yes. Not that left field is easy because playing it off the monster is not the most simple thing to do.
No, but it's more about brains.
Wilyer Abreu, because Wilyer Abreu, you're not taking him off right field. He's won two Gold Gloves there, where Jarren Duran.
But I meant more so like, I wonder how much the Red Sox look at it and go like, yes, we love Abreu, but if they feel Roman Anthony fits better in right field, then the simpler option is you just trade your right fielder and get a better return versus trading Jarren Duran for a lesser return and then try to figure out, okay, like, well, now we have to figure out, we have to teach one of those guys how to play left. Again, I'm not saying it's impossible, but that kind of rolled around in my head too, is what's the thought process between the fit of where those guys play defensively.
Yeah, that makes sense. This just came into my head as you were going through the Dustin May trade. Do you get the sense that there's, and maybe you can't even project this because both of them kind of have been a oh shit panic moment, but in the two of Breslow's biggest trades have kind of felt like they've been like, okay, Max Fried signed with the Yankees. Oh shit, let me go turn around and trade for Garrett Crochet. Same thing with Dustin May when they lost out on Joe Ryan. I mean, I'm sure that's not exactly how it went down, but do you get the sense that like there's like let's say tomorrow Bregman signs with the Blue Jays, are they going to turn right around and be like, oh shit, I got to go get Bo Bichette or someone of similar caliber, or is that just like
he came out yesterday and said the roster is incomplete. We don't know what that means to whatever extent. And Ben and I went back and forth early this week, and he's like, why do you feel any bit belief in that they're going to improve the roster? And this is prior to the Contreras trade. And it kind of goes back to like, they don't have a choice. Like, and yes, they do. Obviously, technically, they could just not sign anybody. But they're not going to go into this season with how it is right now. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that like Bregman's probably plan A, but if they don't get Bregman, then I think it turns quickly into like a different option. Whether it's trade for Marte or sign Bo Bichette, or I mean, maybe even Okamoto's still on the table because he can play third base. And so it's kind of back and forth there. It's like, all right, what their best option is. So, yeah, I mean, I think if Bregman was to sign elsewhere, I think that they would pivot quickly into a different move. The question is just, what is that move? Personally, like, and I've been vocal about this, is Bo Bichette is my 1A, but I don't think that they view it like that. I think Bo Bichette's kind of waiting out the Kyle Tucker news in Toronto. Like, is he going to end up in Toronto, and then that means Bo Bichette somewhere else? I think that's what's going to happen. I think Kyle Tucker sadly will end up in Toronto. So, I mean, yeah, I think that they would, to put it simple, I think that they would turn quickly into their plan B or plan C. I mean, I think their current team already is like going into plan A, plan B, or plan C. I don't think Wilson Contreras was their plan A going into the offseason, right? It's all right, we talked to Alonso. He wanted too much. Maybe they know the price in Okamoto and they don't want to touch that. So they went into, okay, fine, we'll take Wilson Contreras type of deal.
Yeah. It just felt like there was, and maybe Dustin May was the really like the bigger, where did this come from? Because there were rumblings at the trade deadline the year before we got Garrett Crochet that they were interested in trading for him, and then obviously they revisited in the offseason. So it's curious of like, is there a random person that you've heard or random player you've heard of like what?
No, I haven't heard any specific like names that could come out of left field of like possibilities really. The one name I just still keep an eye on is Joe Ryan.
Yeah. Kind of remind my
I struggle if I'm Minnesota to see a path where their team is competitive this year. I think that they're just not good. And so they don't have it's not like, Joe Ryan has 2 years of control. So it's not like they're desperate that they need to deal him. They could deal him next offseason and get probably pretty close to the same return. Mm-hmm. That said, two things play into that. One, a team obviously likes 2 years of control versus 1 year of control. It helps in their payroll now, and it helps in negotiations for a bigger deal, where we'll increase next year's on a new deal instead of you having to play it out on whether it's 20 million, you can get an extra 10, and then it helps in the deal. And two, we see this in pitchers all the time. What happens if he blows out his arm? Mm-hmm. Like all of a sudden now, midway through or a third of the way through 2026, he blows out his arm. All of a sudden, like no one's going to want him until the deadline of his last year when he's maybe back or, something like that. So I just go back to him where I think that they have a structure probably pretty close of what it would take. And I just think it makes a lot of sense for both sides to do a deal like that. Him and Freddie Peralta. Freddie Peralta is another name that I think the Sox can still easily go get. I do think he ends up being traded. It's tough because there's still some big names in free agency. So I think teams around the league are like, these are my option A's because I don't want to give up pieces to get other pieces when I can just sign them. So once we see some of these top names still come off the board, whether it's like Bregman, Bichette, Valdez, I think the trade market will kind of pick up a little bit again.
Sure.
Yeah. So, all right. I do want to finish up. We got about 20 minutes with some Patriots. They came back from a 11-point deficit against the Baltimore Ravens on the road to win, to give them a clinching situation of the playoff berth. They now head to New York this week, the dreaded New York Jets. We've been saying that for 25 years. But the New York Jets, God, it would be so bad to be a Jet fan, man. I feel so bad for them.
Every 2 years to reset. Oh.
I don't feel bad for them. I feel bad for like a kid that grows, like is morphed into a Jets fan because like his dad was. Like I kind of like myself. Like I became a Patriots fan because my grandfather had season tickets. My dad has them, and now my brother and I have them. Like so it's like imagine growing into a Jet fan, and it's like if you were like our age, right?
Nothing to look forward to.
What have they had? If you're my age at 29 years old, about to be 30, which oh god.
The cute little run in 09-10 with Mark Sanchez, and then the Patriots.
Yeah, like that's your peak, and it gets pushed out of the table because that same guy decided to run into the butt of someone, and that's all people remember from the Mark Sanchez era is a butt fumble.
I mean, it was a silver lining. That was the year that they came into Foxborough and knocked us out in the divisional round after having a first round bye.
I mean that's their peak. Their peak is that they knocked the Patriots out of the playoffs one year.
Yeah, that was part of the 2-year run of going back-to-back AFC Championship games, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
They
both.
20. Yeah. They lost in 09 to Pittsburgh before they went on to beat Arizona in the Super Bowl, and then they lost to the Colts the following year, and that was the year they lost to the Saints.
Yep.
Oh God, yeah. Jesus, that was so long ago. But
yeah.
So it's it's a good situation, obviously, for the Patriots right now. The Jets are starting Brady Cook. It's Brady, right? Brady Cook.
Brady
Is that
Cook, yep.
correct? Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
And then they're going to have the Miami Dolphins coming to Gillette to finish the year. I believe
Quinn
that's
Ewers,
correct.
maybe.
Yeah, and Quinn Ewers. So they seemingly have two, I mean, quote like layup games. Games that they should.
two very winnable games.
Yeah, they have two games that they should certainly win. If they win this week and the Eagles beat the Bills, the Patriots will be AFC East champions.
Yep.
So it's a possibility that they have the chance to beat the Bills and do it, but it's possibility that's a hat and t-shirt weekend coming up. Nevertheless, the kind of floors in front of them in what they can be in finishing the record and where they'll kind of stand. The only thing, and Ben loves to do this to me and just give me all the games and make me pick them and play out the scenarios. But the only thing that they're really looking for outside that they need help for is a Chargers Week 18. Well, assuming Denver beats KC with the garbage that is there now. But
yes,
the only other option is you need Denver to lose to the LA Chargers. If that happens and you win out, you're the 1 seed. Assuming they just win next 2 games, they're locked into the 2 seed. So you feel confident that 2 is the floor at this point, and the only game you're really looking at is that the Chargers Denver game, and they haven't announced those games yet. So I'm really hoping that they put them on a Saturday and the Pats play on Sunday, so that the Pats can know where they stand heading into their Week 18 game. If Denver wins, they still need to win, I think, to lock in the 2 seed. But the 1 seed's gone.
Yeah. Here's my, because I thought about this about, okay, well, who's going to play and when? Because you're looking at if the Chargers win on Saturday this week, because I think they play Saturday, regardless of what Denver does this weekend, Week 18 is for the AFC West Championship. If the AFC West Championship is on the line Week 18, that to me feels like the Sunday night 8:30 NBC game, and that your Saturday night game is going to be Bucks Panthers for the NFC South. Because it's less of a marquee matchup.
You're missing a huge matchup.
Week 18 or Week 17?
Week 18.
49ers Seahawks.
Yeah, they could be playing for the division and the 1 seed.
Oh shit!
Correct. Yeah, it all depends on how this plays out. Because
my guess,
the Seahawks probably won't based on the matchups. Because I think the Rams have a decent game this weekend. The 49ers host the Bears this weekend, which is a huge game. And I didn't dive into it, but quick on the 49ers. Schefter just put out a video saying that the 49ers theoretically could play their next 5 games in a row at home, including Super Bowl 60, because it's in Santa Clara. Because they host the Bears this weekend. They host the Cardinals in Week 18. And then, depending on how things play out, if they get the 1 seed, they would host all of the games in the NFC playoffs. And then that would end with them hosting the Super Bowl. But anyway, so yeah, because I don't know I'd have to look at the schedule. I don't know who the Rams play this weekend. The only way that Seattle clinches the division and home field advantage is if they win and both the Rams and the 49ers lose.
So the thing is, they have to, and we have to note, I'm pretty sure that they're going to have to make these decisions today or tomorrow. They can't make them on Monday of when the games are going to be. I don't think
that's the marquee matchups get flexed the week of.
They decide that week.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess they can.
I shouldn't say they do, but they have, because there's been because depending on how the Week 17 games play out, because I think what they do is they schedule the majority of the games should be scheduled this week, and then they leave some of the games available for flexing and tell those teams, hey, like, be prepared that your game.
I think it's usually the day of. Like they may flex. There's usually 2 or 3 games on Saturday. I think they might change. Oh, you're going to be at 8 instead of 4:30. But I don't know if they you don't know what day altogether.
No. It wouldn't be the day. It would be the time. Like the day that you're playing would be planned in advance. But then, like I said, because you could have matchups that directly impact division championships, right? Like we talked about, Seahawks 49ers could be for the NFC West title. The Bucks Panthers game will be for the NFC South title, regardless of what happens this weekend, unless Carolina wins and the Bucks lose. That's the only way that the Week 18 game doesn't matter. You have the AFC West could be on the line. So I think you'd be looking at, you would tell I could theoretically see Rams 49ers being a Saturday night game, and then whatever games end up being your division, like whatever games are going to dictate division.
49ers, you mean?
What did I say?
Rams.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. 49ers Seahawks. I could see that game being Saturday night, because in all likelihood, that is more likely to be for a division championship. Whereas the Chargers have to beat Houston Saturday for their game to matter for the AFC West.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to dive too deep, my guess, I think the Chargers, Broncos, and the Seahawks 49ers, they're going to put them with like the tentative plans that those are going to be the 2 night games on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday night. And it's just labeling which is which. The reason I think that the Broncos and Chargers could be Saturday is because the Broncos play on Thursday and the Chargers play on Saturday. So they're both playing where they'll have like a full week or more to finish up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's why I lean them. But I mean, I look at their schedule and it's all right. I think Seattle 49ers could be on Sunday. You might have the division of the Ravens, the Steelers, if the Steelers lose, but I doubt that this weekend.
Yeah, because the Steelers have an easy game. So I just looked it up real quick. So the entire Week 18 slate is scheduled after every Week 17 game is over. So the Week 18 schedule will not come out until Monday next week.
Okay. All right. Anyways, let's transition quick because I know you gotta go, Ben. So,
yeah.
Where are you right now in the Patriots? They big win in Baltimore.
Yep.
Where do you see them? Obviously, with some health coming back and heading into these final 2 games.
Yeah. So I mean, very winnable games. They should win both. I think that Will Campbell not being eligible till next week. Wouldn't really be surprised if he doesn't play until the playoffs. I've never liked the idea of guys having, the end of the year off. I get he's coming back off an injury, so it's a different set of circumstances. But if he's fully 100% ready to go, I would like to see him out there a little bit Week 18, just so he has he's not going into a first round playoff game, whether it's wild card weekend or divisional weekend, with basically 6 weeks of game time off. That to me doesn't feel great. So again, taking care of the health matters. I don't think the Patriots need, Milton Williams or, Jared Wilson or Kayshon Boutte. I know those are some, those guys are in, concussion protocol along with Henderson. And then, they don't need their A game to win these next 2 games, especially where both teams are in a situation where they're like, oh, we got to figure out whether our second and third string quarterbacks are anything, and that'll help us decide what we do in the offseason. So this Patriots team should be 14-3 going into next year. Well, I mean, the Jets don't have a quarterback because Justin Fields signed a 2-year deal, which I'm sure they can get out of going into next year. That Miami's tough spot is, what are they willing to do with Tua, because his dead cap hit is astronomical. So that might just be their hands might be tied financially for another season. Because I think after 2026, the dead cap hit is at least palatable.
It's gonna be a Russell Wilson situation.
Yeah.
Was it $92 million or something like that next year?
Yeah, his dead cap hit's almost $100 million.
His dead cap hit, yeah.
It's ridiculous. again, that's why I think that it might be more realistic a year from now because at least that dead cap is palatable. So yeah, the Pats should be 14-3. I was impressed with their ability to come back. I understand. Oddly enough, based on how the Ravens do their rotation, there was no Derrick Henry after the touchdown with 12 or 13 minutes to go in the game, whenever it was. I guess the drive that was the Zay Flowers turnover at the end of the game. But he didn't see the field, which, I get he rotates in, but it's like the guy was averaging 7 yards a carry and the Patriots had no answer. I just would have kept feeding him the ball.
There's no reason for him to ever rotate. He's the best running back in the league.
Right. I just think I just think that was a bad coaching decision to be like, oh, well,
no, I agree.
This is how we do things. And I feel like coaches are slaves to that a little bit too much from time to time. The Pats got to get healthy. I think if they're fully healthy by NFL standards, I understand no one's fully healthy come playoff time in the NFL. Everyone's got bumps and bruises and injuries that they're dealing with. So, but if they're fully healthy and all their star players are on the field and ready to go, I think that they've shown that they can compete with anybody. Obviously they split with the Bills and they looked as bad in the second half as they looked good in the first half of that game. I think that, there are people out there, fans, pundits, experts, whatever, that will not give them, as much credit as maybe they deserve or think they deserve. And hopefully that means they get to play with a chip on their shoulder. Because I still think the Patriots are 12-3, but there's a lot of that. They have a really weak schedule. Which they have fully taken advantage of. They took advantage.
Didn't throw a touchdown pass against the Bills. I've heard it. There's all.
Exactly.
There's all those stupid little things.
But I think that you could say that about a lot of other teams. I mean, the 100%. The Broncos just got their ass handed to them by the Jaguars on Sunday. The Bills barely got by the Browns, and
you
so
can always play who's in front of you.
Yeah, so you can only play. Yeah, right. Exactly. You can only play who's right in front of you. If they're fully healthy, I give them as good a shot to win the AFC as the Broncos, the Bills, any of those other top teams. So. I like where they're at. I think they're in a good spot. Get healthy, win these next 2 games, and then, head on into the playoffs. Hopefully it's the 1 seed. That extra week's rest would be fantastic. Playing out the scenarios, I don't love the idea of playing Houston in the first round. But if they don't get the 1 seed, that kind of looks like how it's going to shake out based on who, the matchups league wide. I think, that's a game the Patriots, I think, should win, but it's just a bad matchup for the Pats. So, win these next 2 games, be healthy, and then, see what happens in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is they have the easiest remaining schedule of any other team that really matters between Buffalo and Denver. And if we get the number 2 seed, then we played better on the road this year than we have at home, oddly enough. We're, 6-3 at home and undefeated on the road, or 5-3 at home, whatever we are. But yeah, we split the 2 games we needed to split, or that everyone talked about needing to split. Buffalo and Baltimore, kind of the opposite of what happened in Buffalo, where as bad as we looked in Baltimore at the beginning of the first half, they came back and kind of righted the ship. Second half, obviously, got some help with Derrick Henry not playing for whatever reason. We just talked about in the fourth quarter. But yeah, I mean, easy schedule coming up with New York and Miami. I agree with you. I would probably sit Will Campbell for the end of the year. I'm with you as well. I don't love when they sit their starters in week 18. It used to be week 17. Just kind of gets out of that mindset a little bit. But with him, it's a different story. Same thing with Milton Williams, Travion Henderson. Just get healthy, get right for the playoffs. These games should be very winnable. The Jets are as dysfunctional and abysmal as any team I've ever seen. And the Dolphins don't really have anybody else to worry about. I mean, Devon Achane is good, but that's it. So 2 very winnable games. Should be 14-3 at the end of the year. Maybe a back into the 1 seed. That'd be great as well. But like I said, for all intents and purposes, a number 2 seed after the last couple of years we've gone through is a hell of a turnaround. And just get right for the playoffs.
Exactly. All right, I got to go.
All right, Ben,
All right,
we'll finish up here.
Quick, Pats, I'll say 27-10 over the Jets this weekend.
I like it.
Okay. Yeah, no, we'll finish up here because there's obviously not a ton to talk about with the Pats specifically. I mean, there's a ton of offseason scenarios that could play out. Right now, it's just kind of they went in and they won 1 of 2 against the Bills and the Ravens. They did what they were kind of supposed to do, and they got 2 easy games here. So it's all right. You're pretty much locked into the 2 seed unless they lay a goose egg. A big one, like a big one.
If they lose to the Jets, that's brutal.
Yeah. So, but you beat the Jets here, assuming the Broncos win. You head into Week 18, still possibility for the 1 seed, and I can't emphasize this enough. The 1 seed is huge. It's huge. This is a postseason that the Patriots are good. That you can argue that they're the best team in the AFC right now, but even if they are, it's by a very little. There's a ton of it's a wide open AFC, so
no one's running away.
It doesn't matter how you play it out in scenarios. If you can play 2 games instead of 3, that is huge. Absolutely huge. Even if that means you're hosting Buffalo week 2 or you're hosting the Broncos or something like that week 2, it's like you don't want to be playing Houston.
I don't want to be in Denver in the championship game,
You don't want to be that, and you don't, like you said, you don't want to be hosting Houston on the first round of the playoffs or even the Chargers, like any of these teams.
Yeah.
Like you could lose to these teams. It's a balanced AFC, and you don't want to just voluntarily take an extra game because the round 2 could be a little bit easier. Like, you could maybe face Pittsburgh instead of these teams. It's like, no, I'd much rather take Buffalo in the second round than play Houston and Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
like
100%.
I don't want to take the risk of a whole extra game. So
no, the Baltimore win made the second half of the Buffalo game that much more painful because you could easily be sitting pretty at the 1 seed and then now you control your own destiny.
But it
didn't work that way. So
we can always go back to even
it is what it is. Exactly.
This team just completely handed away games early in the season too.
Yeah.
The first few weeks. This team literally should be
they could very well be 15-1 at the end of the year or whatever it is, 16-1.
They should be undefeated if we're being real.
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh game they handed away.
Yes.
Handed away.
Those two didn't hurt me much because we weren't 12-3 at the time of losing.
Yeah.
So it was like
the Raiders game, they played absolutely horrible. In the Buffalo game, you had a 21-0 lead, and you just get you. No matter how good Buffalo played, and they did play great in the second half, every team should be able to hold that down. And
you shouldn't be giving up 5 straight touchdown drives.
Exactly. So
in any NFL game,
it's tough to say the what ifs and all that of any. Because every team can play the what ifs and stuff like that, but
of course,
but
it did make the second half of that game that much more painful watching them win whatever day it was on Sunday night.
Yeah, well, it was good and it was good to see Drake May play big in the fourth quarter after
he does come back.
Pretty rough second half against Buffalo. You were a little bit worried of does this guy have the it factor of playing in the big moments, stuff like that. He showed up. He was 13 of 15 in the fourth quarter or something like that.
5 of 6 for 69 yards on that last drive. He was surgical. He was great.
And on top of them, just the worst non-call that I think I've ever seen. The deep ball to booty. On top of that, people don't even notice on that same play, Kyle Van Noy clearly tries to trip Drake May, which also wasn't called. So it was
holy shit,
that's 2 very blatant non-calls.
We're getting no calls, which means we are 100% back, that's the silver lining there,
All right, score prediction this weekend?
Kind of like Ben's, but I'll go 28-13. I'll give him an extra field goal.
I'll go 30-9.
30-9.
I don't see them
give up. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I just I struggle to see them doing virtually anything offensively. The Jets, and they might make a couple drives, but that would give them 3 drives into the Patriots territory.
and
they just
that would
finished
be-
with field goals. So
yeah,
I'll go
true.
for 30 to 10. And I was happy to be wrong. I wasn't very happy with the wasn't really optimistic with the Ravens game, and they pulled it out. So now I'm overly optimistic. I'm back on the horse of being.
Yeah. I missed that week. It was the week my Wi-Fi wasn't working, so I couldn't join. So I missed that you were negative then, but
no, I thought they were going to beat Buffalo. So all right, that's going to do it for this week. We will be back after the new year with episode 100. We're hoping to line up some good guests for everybody to listen to. But until then, have a good Christmas, everyone. Good New Year's. And like I said, we'll be back. We're shooting for January 5th. But we'll be back after the New Year. So, all right, take care. Go
Merry
Patriots.
Christmas. Happy New Year's.
Sign Bo Bichette.
Sign Bo Bichette.
That's all I have to say.
Exactly.
Goodbye.
Bye.